want to talk about what I would argue is one of the most important developments of prophetic significance taking place this last week. And I'm, of course, speaking of President Trump making good on his campaign promise to move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which took place on Monday. I'll start with this breaking Israel news article titled, appropriately, An End of Days Guide to the Embassy Move. On Monday, the U.S. Embassy was officially opened in Jerusalem as per the orders of President Donald Trump in what many believe was an integral part of the, interesting, messianic process. Keep in mind now, the Jews are still waiting for their Messiah because they rejected the true Messiah. Integral part of the messianic process that will culminate in another architectural landmark, the building of the third temple. Several prominent rabbis weigh in on what this really means and why it is not simply another short-lived political agenda. Rabbi Jeremy Gimpel, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, the founder of the Land of Israel Network, sees the U.S. Embassy opening in Jerusalem as part of prophecy and an answer to Jewish prayers. The rabbi noted that some religious people were skeptical of the religious basis of a political move made by President Trump. Listen to this quote from this rabbi. I would encourage those who say that President Trump is not a holy man and therefore can have no place in this godly process to look to the book of Isaiah and Ezra, where the divine plan of restoration was done through a man named Cyrus. Rabbi Gimpel said, it would be a tragic mistake to view this historic move as unintentional or a coincidence, coming as it does on Israel's 70th anniversary, which was on May 14th. Quoting, the end of this process is known, Geula, redemption, since President Trump has taken steps that bring the world closer to Geula, redemption. He has succeeded where others have failed. No other president has brought the embassy to Jerusalem, so Trump has had unexpected success. His greatest step in this process was canceling the deal with Iran, which at its very core was aimed at destroying Jerusalem. Okay, hang on to that. Judge Jeanine Pirro of Fox News echoed this sentiment concerning Trump's prophetic role of being a type of King Cyrus, which for those of you who were with us on Thursday nights, we went through the book of Ezra, a very fascinating study. We learned about this fascinating man, King Cyrus. On Monday, pardon me, the Christian Post published an article quoting Pirro as saying, Donald Trump recognized history. He, like King Cyrus before him, fulfilled the biblical prophecy of the gods worshipped by Jews, Christians, and, yes, Muslims. Okay. Just to be clear, Muslims do not worship the same God as the Jews and the Christians. Allah is not the same God as Jehovah. Okay. That Jerusalem is the eternal capital of the Jewish state, and that the Jewish people deserve a righteous, free, and sovereign Israel. The article goes on to say that in March, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu himself likened Trump to Cyrus, who in the Bible is recognized as the Persian king who rescued the Jewish people from Babylonian captivity. Very interesting. While this was a day of celebration for Jews and Christians, it was Nakba, which in my native tongue of Arabic means day of catastrophe for the Palestinians. It's for this reason that the Gaza riots took place in which 50 Hamas terrorists were killed. According to this breaking Israel news report on Thursday, a Hamas official admitted in an interview that 50 of the some 62 Palestinians killed in clashes with Israeli security forces along the Gaza border were members of the Palestinian terrorist group. The revelation that many of the protesters killed along the Gaza border were members of Hamas confirms Israeli leaders' accounts that the Palestinian terrorist group was using opening of the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem on Monday to score propaganda points. That's what was really happening. And if this weren't bad enough, according to the Times of Israel, the Hamas co-founder Mahmoud al-Zahar is even admitting that they are deceiving the public about the border protests. In Al Jazeera interview, he stated that the terror group was, quote, deceiving the public when it spoke of peaceful resistance a day before 60 people were killed in violent protests on the Gaza border. To add insult to injury, the Jerusalem Post reported that Erdogan is saying Turkey will not allow, get this, Israel to steal Jerusalem from the Palestinians. Speaking at a dinner on the first day of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, which also commenced this last week, Erdogan said the majority of the international community had failed to react to the events in Gaza and warned that remaining silent would mean, quote, opening a very dangerous door. The events in Gaza have also sparked a diplomatic row between Turkey and Israel, with both countries expelling each other's senior diplomats on Tuesday. It's important to note that this comes on the heels of another report about the Turkish Prime Minister calling for an extraordinary summit of nations, Islamic nations, to unite against Israel, and included in this summit would be Russia, Iran, Turkey, and Sudan, among others. Now, why is that important? Because those are exactly the nations that are listed by their ancient names in Ezekiel chapter 38. I know that you know where I'm going with this, so I'll get right to the prophetic point, so to speak. I would submit that everything we witnessed this last week has moved us even closer. And when I say even closer, please know that we were moving ever so close prior. But we have now, I believe, moved even closer to the fulfillment of 3 specific Bible prophecies. You see them there on the screen, starting with, of course, Ezekiel 38. And I want to talk about Ezekiel 38 more in a moment here. But for those of you who are unfamiliar with this prophecy in Ezekiel 38, it is a prophecy about an alliance of nations that all come together to attack Israel, not for the purpose chiefly of wiping them off the map. Rather, it's for the purpose of taking a spoil. By spoil, that means that Israel has something they want. Again, hang on to that. I want to come back to that. Oh, by the way, they don't succeed. And the reason they don't succeed is not because the United States comes to Israel's defense, no. It's because God comes to the defense of his people, the Jewish people. And this alliance of nations are soundly defeated. Soundly defeated. And there's every indication that it happens very, and I like this word particularly, suddenly. It's going to happen very quickly. Is that a synonym for suddenly? Let's just say it is. It's going to happen very quickly. The second prophecy that I believe we have moved even closer to the fulfillment of is Zechariah 12. And this is a prophecy concerning how God himself is going to make the city of Jerusalem, the city that he has chosen out of all of the cities, out of all of the tribes, to place his name of ownership on, that he will make Jerusalem the intoxicating obsession of the entire world. You can't read a news report on your news feed or watch a news broadcast concerning the Middle East without hearing about Jerusalem being this big, burdensome problem. That's Zechariah 12. That's Zechariah 12. And then, thirdly, Daniel 9:27. And this is a prophecy very detailed about how the Antichrist by force will enforce a 7-year peace agreement. And at the midpoint, 3.5 years, he will set himself up as God in the newly rebuilt temple, which would imply that it's part of said 7-year peace deal, which we just got done reading, that the Jews are anticipating is going to happen. And at the midpoint, he demands to be worshipped. And it's at this point that the Jews realize this is not our Messiah. He will commit this abomination, Daniel 9:27 says, that causes desolation. And the Jews will realize that our true Messiah would never do that. And that will bring them to a saving knowledge of their true Messiah, having embraced the false Messiah, the Antichrist, first. So, what am I saying? What I'm saying is that everything that we're seeing happening right now is exactly what we were told would happen. And as we speak, I truly believe that the world is ripe and ready, if I can say it that way, for the Antichrist to come on the scene. In Israel, they are. And it's like everything is now being readied for this man to come on the scene and do this.